Hey everybody, Robert with RC Archery. Today's video, I'm going to give you a review and also my initial thoughts and feelings on the 2018 PSE Perform-X 3D. I'm going to tell you what they changed on the bow, how it's different from the Expression lineup that was going out now, and then also I tuned the bow two different ways. And I want to go over each way that I did that, pluses and minuses on those, and maybe help give you an idea on the way you would want to tune the bow whenever you get it. All right, so the first thing I want to do is just talk about the changes and also show you the new Perform-X 3D, the differences between that and the Expression that was going out as well. As you can see, side by side, these bows are definitely different, even though spec-wise they are similar. You can see that the Perform-X here on the left has a longer riser than the Expression. That does help in some stability, and you can feel that at full draw. That longer riser feel definitely gives you a little bit of fight against wanting to torque the bow left or right as far as tilting the top cam left or right, and it just helps you feel a little bit steadier and more stable when you make some movements or changes and bobbles at full draw. Now, to pair with that, you can also see that the limbs on the Perform-X are a little bit shorter than the Expression. That gives the overall length is still similar that way, but it also helps you drive a little bit of performance out of the limbs so that you're not having to have as harsh of a cam, which is very important, especially on a target bow, to help you be a little bit more stable. Now, the grip height is another big difference between these two bows. You can see that the height change between the Perform-X and the Expression. They lowered the grip on the new Perform-X bows. They did this so that they could put the pulling point of the bow, so the burger button hole and where you would put the arrow in the loop, they made that in the middle of the bow, so it's got a center pull design. Now, from an archer standpoint, that can help us as far as the tune on the bow. It helps you get a vertical knot travel that's not varying. It's also going to help you with the feel of the bow. It adds a little bit more of a neutral feel to help you balance it the way that you would like to and really feed off of the riser geometry on this bow. Now, being that the specs on this bow and the Expression were very similar, when you look at them side by side and overall height, we want to look at cam to cam, not just axle to axle. Axle to axle is a great number, but cam to cam, that length there, that's what you're going to see for your string angles. Now, for the Perform-X 3D, you actually have a longer bow cam to cam. It's taller. You can see here with both bows sitting on the cam on the ground. The top cam is definitely higher on that Perform-X. The differences at full draw though aren't as severe as what you would look at just seeing it at brace, so at rest here. I measured the string angle and I also measured the length between the Perform-X and the Expression at full draw. The Perform-X 3D is only 3/8 longer cam to cam at full draw than the Expression. That's the Expression 3D as well. Now the string angle, there was a 2-degree difference. 47 degrees is what I measured the Perform-X 3D versus 45 degrees on the Expression 3D. So talking about the cams, obviously one of the big differences is PSE going from a hybrid system like what they've been using for multiple years now into a dual cam system with their Evolve series. Now the Evolve cam was around on their hunting lineup, and it's a very popular cam in that respect. What they did for the target lineup is they actually created what they're calling a mini Evolve cam. So it's a mini Evolve system. It's a little bit smaller than their hunting lineup. It allowed them to get the draw lengths that they wanted out of it. It also allowed them to help get the speed and efficiency that they were wanting with this target setup and the lineup that they're using on here. The Evolve cam system does use a little bit different draw stop. It's something I've talked about in a live feed on my Instagram channel, and I wanted to go over it here as well. The draw stop on this bow has a rubber section or rubber piece right there at the end, so hopefully that's going to pick up on camera somewhat decently. The rubber there on the end of the draw stops, now being that there are 2 draw stops both on the top and the bottom cam versus one that they had on the Expression unless you use that limb stop, this bow doesn't have quite as solid of a back wall as the Expression. Now, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's definitely not spongy by any means, and you're not going to pull through it and feel like you can just pull for days. But you can definitely feel just a tiny bit of give with that rubber spacer being there, that insert being there on the end of the draw stops. Now, for me, I actually like that. It seems to be more forgiving. It doesn't feel like you're gonna pull into the wall, and then if you need to expand a little bit more to try to settle nerves maybe, or just try to steady up your sight picture, or if you're the type of archer that's gonna pull through their shot, this bow is gonna be a little bit more forgiving for you because there is a slight bit of give there. Now, if you're an archer though that doesn't want that and they want a rock solid wall that's almost similar to a limb stop, but not quite as solid, not quite as aggressive, you can take these rubber pieces out. I've seen some photos of Jack Wallace with his PXE, his Performex bow. It looks like he has taken these rubber pieces out. From all I can tell is they can just slide straight out. They're probably glued in there, so you might have to work with them a little bit. But you can't take those out. It's not gonna hurt your string. It's not gonna have any problems, and it's gonna give you a metal, flat area for the string to butt up against. So there are going to be some stops coming out from Matchpoint Archery. They're going to come out with a pro stop to be able to put on here. But until then, if you do want a more solid wall, you can take those out. Stock, these cams are adjustable from 65 to 75% let off. You do that by taking a screw out here and sliding this draw stop back and forth on both the top and the bottom cam. You can also get an additional high let off mod, or just draw stop rather, and basically it's just going to shift around in there a little bit different. So it's going to be able to help you get from, I believe, 80 to 90% on those. Back wall feel on it, the way the cam feels as far as aggression and everything, these cams do feel like at the same let off as the expression to want to take off a little bit easier. Not aggressively bad or anything weird like that. I'm running both setups at 73% let off, my expression, and then this Performex here as well. And both of them feel pretty similar, but I do notice that I have to be just a little bit more aggressive on the back wall. So if you're an archer that really wants to just relax, you might want to look into the higher let off, because even at 75% or in that area, you might want a little bit more, try to get maybe 80 to have the similar feel as what you had in that expression. The cams are incredibly smooth. I have a lot of questions about that. How does it feel? There's a lot of comments about this. When you draw the bow, it feels like it's less poundage and people having to put them on a scale. I was the exact same way. I set the bows up at 57 pounds. It matched what I was using with the expression, and honestly, it felt like low 50s. If I hadn't have been setting it up and using a scale just to double check it, I would have thought the same thing. So these cams are very smooth. They're very easy to draw. You're not going to feel any humps. You're not going to feel any bobbles going into the back wall. It's very easy to keep your arrow on a blade rest because of that. And it's very easy to tune these as well. So when it comes to shooting this bow, I had a little bit of thoughts and a little bit of concerns about the lowered grip, the way that they set this bow up. Typically in the past, when I've had bows with the lower grip and the pulling point being in the middle, I didn't like the balance of the risers because they would want to flip over backwards bare with nothing on them. That caused me to have to really load the front stabilizer with a lot of weight to get the balance that I needed out of the bow. And with all that weight being further away from my hand, it sometimes caused me some problems with holding on target, because if I wasn't shooting regularly, my archery muscles, I guess you would want to call it, they weren't as strong. So I couldn't hold the bow up as well, and I couldn't hold it as steady. If I had to back the weight down, then the bow just became light and it wanted to dance around. It wasn't as favorable to what I like. With the Performex, when I got it, the first thing I did was pull it out of the box and hold it bare and just let go and see what it did. And I was surprised, because with this bow, it wants to tilt forward. It's not an aggressive wanting to tilt forward. As you can see here, it does tilt, but that was completely different from what I was expecting it to be and what I was afraid it was going to be. So for me, I really like the way they did the balance on this. I think the reason it does that is because here at the top, you can see how it's going to curve forward a little bit compared to the grip and just the design of the bow. It looks like they built it to where it can be a little bit more top heavy and actually tilt it forward. That allows me to be able to still load the front bar with enough weight to keep it from wanting to dance and skate around, but I can actually load this bow up with weight just being on the back bar. The overall weight of this bow, that way I can keep it to where it's comfortable for me to shoot, and it's going to help me keep from having misses on target if I bobble as bad, but it's going to keep the weight off the back bar being closer to my body. And being able to do that, it allows me to be able to hold this bow a lot steadier, a lot longer, And if I'm not in shooting shape, because I'm not shooting very often, such as right now, and I only shoot every week, maybe if I'm lucky once, this bow doesn't punish me. It doesn't kill me as bad because of that balance. So I'm really impressed with that. I'm really liking that. Now, another thing that, I talked about there was, of course, it moved the pulling point in the burger button hole to the midpoint of this bow. Now, in the past, I've set bows up differently. On this one, I actually set it up to where the middle of the arrow is running through the middle of the burger button hole. This is allowing me to pull exactly in the middle of the bow like it was designed to do. And this is actually where it's set up best for me on the way the bow wants to hold and aim on target. I played around with that and raised that and lowered that in the past. The Prevail that I had, which was a similar riser design with a lowered grip, I actually ran the bottom of that arrow through the middle of the burger button hole in that bow because it did feel like I needed a little bit more leverage over the top of the bow after having to weight that front stabilizer so heavy. This one definitely tuned up really well there. Obviously, it's designed to do that, so vertical knock travel was just perfect. Very easy to do. Both the cams touching at the exact same time, and it tuned out perfectly. So now that I've talked about how it shoots, I want to go over how I've got it set up right now. I'm going to give you a quick overview of my arrow stabilizer setup, what I'm doing with the adjustable cable rod here, and just give you an idea on what I'm finding that works best for me. Arrow-wise, I'm using an Easton Superdrive 23 and a 375 spine. Now, this is different for me. I've been using the aluminum 23 series arrows from Easton for the past couple seasons. And I'm actually finding that the carbon arrow here is a lot more forgiving. With the aluminum arrow, it seems like it was more like a tuning fork. You had to do a lot of work with it on point weights, changing them around, finding out what worked best for it, length on the arrow, and then also max weight on the bow. So with these carbon arrows, I really didn't have to do any of that at all. I set it up on target 2. I used 28-inch carbon to carbon, and I used a 200-grain point. For anybody that's going to ask on how I set that up on OT2 without it being in the arrow database, what I did was I went to Easton's website, found their static spine rating, found some diameter info, and the specs that I needed to input it into on target 2 with a non-database arrow. There's an option for that on the older platform that I'm using on the computer. That's how I did this. And it's the first time I've ever had to do that. I was a little somewhat skeptical about it, but it did turn out to work really good for me. This arrow is grouping really well. It's very forgiving, and it seems to be the winner. It seems to be the golden ticket for it. For me, I'm using AAE Max Stealth vanes. This is a newer vane that I'm starting to use. I've been using Easton vanes in the past. This AAE vane is the dual technology where it's got a different ridge and ribs that are built into it, so it makes the arrow, or the vane rather, react a little bit differently. I started using the AAE vanes like this on my outdoor arrows, and I noticed right away that the grouping shifted to the left. I use a left helical on them, so it shifted to the left when I went to the AAE. It was getting more rotations out of the arrow, and it looked like it was grouping a lot tighter when I was messing up. So I'm doing the same thing for my indoor arrows. Again, this seems to be running really well. May play around with some different vanes on it, but for now, I'm happy and I'm just working on myself. Stabilizer-wise on this bow, when I was using the Expression, I actually went from a 1 to 2, which was what I was normally using on my Hoyts, to a 1 to 3. That seemed to be what balanced best for it. It's got a little bit more of a curved limb design to it. It's got a little bit different platform for the way it feels in your hand. With this bow, I knew I was going to need to either lengthen my rear rod, or if I stayed with the same length of rear rod that I was using, I needed to go to probably a 1 to 4 ratio. I actually ended up being really close to that. I'm using a 30-inch front rod with 4 ounces on the front. It's a 10-degree down connection that I'm using here in the front. I use that 10-degree down because it seems to help settle my sight picture a little bit faster when I get on target. I don't see the wiggling and the waggle left and right as badly with this. It also seems to feel a little bit better to me. Just lowering that center of gravity down with that lower on the front bar. It just seems like it holds a little bit better for me too. Back bar, I'm still using a 12-inch rear rod. It's got 17 ounces on it right now. It's sitting level. I may play with dropping it down a little bit. I'm still trying to fine tune all that and see what I like best for my hold and how I'm executing my shots. If I'm taking the 1 ounce off the back and making it 16 ounce, it seems too front heavy. If I put that 1 ounce on the back, it's a little bit too front light. So by lowering that bar down, it's taking some of the leverage away, and it's gonna help me, hopefully help me in getting this to balance the way that I want to for my shot execution. Cable guard wise, I haven't played with it from the way it was from the factory. With these new cable rods on the Performex lineup and the newer lineups that they're running for their Target series, they're adjustable. There's a screw here that you can loosen off and you can adjust this and rotate it left and right. Doing that is going to cause this rod to go further out or further in. And of course, it's designed with a cutout right there and it flexes as you're drawing the bow back. So still got the roller guard. It's still really smooth when you're drawing it back. It's very smooth drawing bow, and I really like that about it. For me, I normally have those right tears, and I need a little bit more. I guess, load on this cable rod. That helps with the right tear. So I haven't messed with it at all. It did tune up well for me, 2 different ways that I did it without having to adjust that, and I haven't messed with it at all. I'll be totally honest with you on it. They also make a rod that doesn't flex, so if you want to just get a standard rod on there and you don't want it to be flexing in and out, you do have that option. With my indoor arrows, I have perfectly good clearance here. I haven't run into any problems with hitting the cables with my vanes or anything crazy like that. Blade that I'm using is a .101 wide, the best blade. Comes with the Spot Hog here. I had to buy it, but it's for the Spot Hog. It's basically like it would be the short blade on an AAE rest instead of their standard longer blade. So that's kind of what I'm using here. I've got it around a 35-degree angle and just got it set up, like I said, with the middle of the arrow running through the middle of the burger button hole. So, and that's with the arrow fully on the rest. So fully bending down. I didn't lift it up. I didn't do anything crazy like that. Everything else is pretty standard. Same sight that I've been using, same shrewd scope that I've been using. This is the mini mag, still really liking that, still working well. I've got a 19 thousandths fiber in there and I've got it a little bit oversized. So I just melted it down and let it get a little bit bigger than the 19. That seems to be filling up most of the gold on a Vegas face and I'm liking that. That's what I've been using. And as far as the cable rod here, I've left it on the bow. I took it off the bow, shot it, left it on the bow, shot it, didn't change the tune at all, didn't change what it's feeling for me. These seem to not wear the same as what the older ones were on the Expression. I got a lot of wear and a lot of grooves in it. This one hasn't done that so far, so far I'm pretty impressed with it. Yeah, and everything else pretty standard, running, you know, standard mods and draw link for me that I'm normally running, and everything is working really good. All right, so now for the part that most everyone is probably waiting on, the tuning. Now with the Performex, they went to a non-yoke system. They typically had the yokes. It would run off the top of the cam here, off the top limbs. That's how you could adjust cam lean. That's how you could adjust your left and rights along with your center shot to help you get perfect bullet holes on paper or whatever tune you were looking for. There's been some concern with PSE going away from that you may have problems being able to tune these bows. Now I've done 2 different methods. The first method that I did was using their lateral adjustment system, so their LAS system. This is a system that they have with 2 bolts that are going to run on the top and the bottom. These you just have to loosen off 2 lock nuts on both sides and adjust this left and right. What this does is actually adjust this pocket, you know, left or right, or change the pitch of it a little bit, and it's going to change the way that the string is running down the bow. So it will shift the cam this way or shift the cam that way. And you can see that when you're using this by looking at your limb stop here, or your cable, string stop rather, you can see it actually shifting left and right. Now when I had my Expression, I did my tuning this way. This is what I actually ended up doing on it, along with my yokes. And that helped me get out my right tear. It helped me get everything tuning down the middle and not really having any issues with it. So that's what I started with on this bow. I did the exact same thing. Everything seemed to work really well. I did even amount on the top and the bottom on the LAS system. I left the arrow rest in the middle, and then I actually found I had to shift it a little bit further out because of everything moving and shifting. Because of that, I was getting some issues where the arrow was coming off the rest as I was drawing it, and it just seemed like the bow wanted to twist more than what I was really comfortable with. I was getting a bullet hole in paper, and I was getting good groupings on target, but it did seem like if I made an error in my shot, or especially in my grip, even after torque tuning it, that I was getting a little bit bigger variance than what I was really expecting to get. So I decided to actually change that. I went through and I set my the LAS system back to standard. I set it straight up in the middle. Now what I also did too, I'll say this, I said this on an Instagram video. On the expression, there was marks. There was lines here on the riser and also on the limb pocket for you to be able to see when you're adjusting that LAS system. There's not on these bows. What I did is I just took a pencil and just did a quick mark right down the middle so I'd have a reference point as to what I was looking at on there. And that way I'd know how I was adjusting it or which direction it was going, things like that. So put it right back in the middle, set it up square, and I actually put the arrow rest, eyeballed it to the exact middle of the riser from the way it looked like just looking at it from the back here. I did that, shot it through paper, got a little bit of a right tear. So from that point I decided to adjust the spacers on the cams. So by doing this, I'm shifting the cam versus shifting the limbs. Now on the top cam here, both these spacers are actually the same widths. So you can't really adjust that without buying an aftermarket setup or equipment to be able to change the spacer widths on there. However, on the bottom cam, they were different. This bottom cam has, you're gonna get me lying here because I don't remember for sure, I believe it was 2 small spacers, small Teflon type spacers, and then 2 small, they look like washers, the very, very thin ones on one side. And stock, it was on left side, so the non-cable guard side, and then it had a thick washer on the cable guard side. So when you have a right tear, you want to move the cam to the right, so move it towards the cable rod. So what I did is I took out and just flip-flopped that system. I took the big one, moved it over, took the smaller ones, moved it over and flipped them. That seemed to completely clear up my right tear, and I actually ended up with a left tear, just a small one. But for me, that's a very rare occurrence because I hardly ever get a left tear. So I was really excited about that. I tuned that out with the arrow rest, just a tiny movement on it. And this bow is shooting just amazing now. With it being tracking right down the middle, if I do some little errors in my grip, I don't notice it as bad on downrange grouping as I did before. It does seem more forgiving that way. And honestly, this bow tracks down the middle and it does really well with its system. I've had some questions on here. Is there cam lean on the bow? There's a little bit of cam lean on the bow, but is it a big deal? No. Is it anything crazy? No, not at all. And I'll show you here with this. This is the top cam looking down on it. You can see that this arrow barely crosses over here at the string, and it's not even all the way crossed over at the loop. A lot of archers, especially with a yoke system, is gonna want that arrow to cross at the loop to get their perfect tune. Myself, I like to usually have it run parallel to the string, but even at that, that's hardly any cam lean at all. And as you're drawing this bow back, especially if you look at it on a draw board, it evens out really well. And that's where you can also play around with this adjustable cable rod, and you can change the tension on it to change the way that the cables are loaded to change that lean a little bit. Now with the bottom cam, obviously this is gonna be a little bit different. I adjusted the shims on it, but as you can see on my bottom cam, I actually have the arrow, it's pointing a little bit away from the loop. Now before it was pointing right about at the loop or maybe running a little bit parallel to the string, I believe is where it was to begin with. But it's a very standard, very good setup. You don't have a lot of cam lean, you don't have anything crazy happening with this. Their wide limb platform that they're using is very stable, and it does take a lot of that cam lean away, so it works really well for you. Haven't had any problems with needing to do anything crazy with it. Everything seems to be working really well. Torque tuned it, paper tuned it, did a quick French tune just for my indoor setup, and shot a bear shaft down there with my fletched arrow at a Vegas face at 20 yards, and both of them nailed the X-ring. So can't get any better for me on that, because I hardly ever get that with a bow. So I'm happy with that, and then I just group tune from there, and I've got it shooting really well. All right, so last thing I want to go over really quick, on these bows you will need torque screwdrivers. So there are some Allen wrench areas that you're going to need to work on this bow, but I did encounter you're going to need Torx as well. There are a couple different sizes that I've seen. There are T10 in order to change your draw stop, T15 in order to change your draw length module, so that's a big one. The LAS system is a T25, and I believe the cable rod is a T25 as well. I haven't touched it and moved it, but that looks like the same size, as well as your limb pockets. So I wanted to go over that really quickly with you. That is something that you're gonna need on that. And then also wanted to talk about bow presses. I've had people ask me, do we need to get special adapters for it? They have pre-flex limbs. No, you don't. That's something that PSE says that you don't have to have. All you have to do is use a certified press that PSE has said that yes, that's okay to be able to use on the bow to maintain your warranty, or take it to one of your dealers. I'm using a Last Chance Archery bow press. This is their Easy Press. This is one that I've had for years. It's held up, it works great for me. I can do anything from completely take this bow down to change and swap limbs on it, all the way to any kind of work that I want to do with that bow. And that leads me to the last thing that I want to talk about, is that I'm also a distributor for Last Chance Archery. I've been doing this for going on 2 years now. It's not something that I really talk about in any of my videos. I made an Instagram post on it the other day. Mainly been selling through Archery Talk, but I did want to let everyone know, because my prices on them I lower way down. Not trying to make a huge profit on these. I'm not trying to solely make my living off of being able to sell their products, but it is something that, because I'm a distributor, I have a lower price range, and that helps me be able to offer a lower price range to my followers. So it's something that I can help give back to y'all. For example, the Last Chance Archery Easy Green Press, I have it for sale for $360. So that's a considerable amount less than what you find other places. And that includes shipping to the lower 48 states. So barely getting by on that. But any items that you may want to look for, they're on my website. It's rcarchery.com. There's no A in that, just rcarchery.com. Put a link to that in the description below. If you don't see something listed on my website, there's a contact form in there. Email me, let me know. I can still get it for you. I'll let you know what prices it is, and I can send you an invoice, or I can add it to the website. All of it's done through a secure checkout system. You can either use PayPal, credit card, or debit card. Appreciate everybody watching today. Hopefully this review is going to help you out. If you had questions on whether or not you wanted to buy one of these bows, how to set one up, what to look for when you go to do it, tuning, all that good stuff. Try to do these as in-depth as I can. Obviously, this is, not a huge amount of string time behind this bow, but as much as, I've got so far, I want to give you my initial impressions. Thank everybody for watching today. I'll see you soon.